There we go.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to my YouTube channel. This is our first live stream show, and I'd love for you to join me in giving a very warm welcome to our special guest, the renowned composer, Alex Heffes. Welcome, Alex.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Thank you. So I'd like to start with doing an introduction before we go into our discussions. So over the years, Alex has been building a phenomenal legacy of great film scores in movies by critically acclaimed directors. He started out with a straight flush of great movies such as One Day in September, which was an Academy Award-winning documentary. This was followed by Touching the Void, a BAFTA-winning documentary as well. Then there was The Last King of Scotland, which was also an Academy and BAFTA-winning film. He worked with Justin Chadwick on The First Grader, for which he won an Ivor Novello Award. And then there was Mandela, The Long Walk to Freedom, for which he was nominated for an Academy Award. Other great directors he's worked with are William Nicholson on Hope Gap, and there's been Stephen Fryers on the program, and Mira Nair, most recently on A Suitable Boy, and earlier on The Queen of Catwight, great movie. And there's Catherine Hardwicke's Mafia Mama. His most recent movie, which we are all awaiting, is called Knox Goes Away. And this features the great actor Michael Keaton making his directorial debut. And yes, I could go on forever, but this is as brief an introduction as I can give. And we'll talk more on all these things later on. So welcome, Alex.
Thank you. Thank you.
And we'll go around in a circle, in a good way. We're going to start with Sudden Light. So Sudden Light is Alex's second album release, yes? Outside of film. It's great, absolutely lovely. And it's an album that was born out of adversity. It sort of signifies triumph over adversity because Alex had injured his wrist and was out of commission in a way in playing the piano for over a year. And so my question, Alex, is this. You've described the piano as being your first voice. How did you cope with the loss of your voice for such a long period of time, both as a composer and on a personal level?
Thank you. Well, I think looking back on it now, it does seem quite extreme, but I think sometimes when you're in the middle of something, you don't quite see it in the same way. You're just trying to go from day to day. So at the time, I was just glad that I hadn't done myself more of a damage. I did break my hand quite badly, and it was in a cast for a very long time, and my finger had a pin in it, and so it wasn't working. Yeah, I guess I was just thinking day to day. So, and I didn't know it was going to be like a year. So I think when I look back on it now, it was quite an intense experience, but I was not aware at the time. I was just trying to sort of get better, and I was in the middle of doing a film as well, and it was all trying to finish writing the music just with one hand. And I'd also agreed to play a concert at my daughter's school, which had been a long time in the diary, and I didn't want to let her down, so I ended up going and playing the concert with one hand on the
Wow.
But as you say, afterwards, when the dust settled and quite, after a year or so later, I realized, oh my goodness, I just haven't played, and I play the piano all the time, every day. It seems strange to sort of say it like that, but it's, you just have to do what you do in the moment. And and then sometime after that, that's when I started having the idea of not really trying to rehabilitate myself, but just dip my toe in the water and see what I could do on the piano. And first of all, my left hand had really atrophied. I couldn't really do anything with it. So I was playing with my right hand a little bit. And then little by little, I started picking out tunes that I'd written for films, just to try and find an easy way of getting into playing the instrument. And I was doing that on and off, just bits and pieces. And after a while, a little light bulb went off in my head, because I'd been playing the tunes from scores that I'd written. And I thought, I'm enjoying playing this on the piano. Perhaps I can make this into something, which is how Sudden Light sort of got born in a way, I started working on making piano versions of some of those pieces. And as I worked on the versions, I must say I felt the strength coming back in my left hand. And it turned out, with retrospect, to be a bit of a therapeutic experience because I'm back to playing. Not, I can't quite play like I did. I don't quite have the octave, that the 10th stretch in my left hand, but I'm pretty much back to normal, and it sort of had the effect of rehabilitating myself without really me thinking about it. It's something that sort of happened organically in a way.
Wow, that's incredible. That's
Yeah.
incredible. Well, it's a beautiful album, and listening to it, I didn't detect, I wouldn't have ever known if you didn't share this story that you were facing this challenge and you didn't have the octave range. For me, as a listener, it's a beautiful, beautiful album. So,
Well,
congratulations.
thank you. Well, I mean, maybe, for me, it was it was quite an emotional experience because I didn't think that I would ever play the piano again. So when I came to finally, and if I'm honest with you, after I finished all the music, I was still concerned about playing, and I had thought about asking a concert pianist, to perform the record rather than me doing it, because I still didn't feel confident that I could do it with the injury that I had. And I was talking to friends and colleagues about it, and every single one said, "Well, yeah, that could be great, and you could find a wonderful pianist, but I think you should do it." And I kept finding excuses why I shouldn't, because I think my confidence had been a bit knocked by having that hand out of commission for such a long time. But finally, the overwhelming volume of advice that was coming
Yes.
towards me, at the last minute, I changed course and I decided to do it. And so when we came to, and then there was COVID, of course. And so after COVID, it was right at the end of COVID, we went into a studio. And so it was the first time I'd been back in a studio since we were all,
Oh, wow. On lockdown.
we were out of commission. And we had a beautiful Steinway piano brought in from Steinway, who were really helpful in LA where I live. They let me go down to their secret stash of pianos that they have behind Symphony Hall, where they don't keep the really good pianos in the shop.
Oh.
They keep them in a warehouse for concert artists, to go and try out. And they have probably 7 or 8 of some of the best pianos, and on the west coast of America there. And so I immediately picked out this piano. It just jumped out to me. And funnily enough, the Ben at Steinway sort of smiled and said, "Yes, this is the one that John Williams always used and has used in various other films." So what can I say? I've obviously got good taste in pianos, but it's an amazing instrument. It just jumps out at you. You can tell that was really one of the instruments with the biggest dynamic range, but also just the biggest range of colors. And when you're recording music for film, sometimes you don't get a chance to really explore those colors, because when music's on a film, there's sort of a dynamic range that's reduced because there's dialogue and there's sound effects and all of these things. But when you're making a record, you can really get into the long grass of how things really sound, into the nitty gritty. So we were able to spend a long time choosing the piano and planning which studio to record in and how we were going to record it, which is really nice because it's not something you get to indulge in when you're necessarily doing a film.
Yes.
All the time. So it was a wonderful experience to sort of reconnect with my instrument in an unexpected, and it's nice that something came out of it that you've enjoyed listening to. That's really great.
Absolutely did, and I'm sure, and I know that many other people did. Many of you who will be listening to this have listened to the album. If you haven't, I highly recommend it. So now we'll move, and I'll ask you, when you were a child, did you have a piano in the family home before your family realized you had this passion for the piano, or did it come in afterwards?
We did have a piano. I think that's the wonderful thing about that instrument, that lots of households are quite lucky, or were quite lucky, to have a piano. It was something that people had around. Maybe a little bit less now. I don't know, but we did. And like a lot of pianos that families have, it was quite beaten up and a bit old, but it doesn't matter because it's just it's around. It's part of the furniture and it's part of the family. So We did, and I used to hear my dad play it. My dad plays the piano really well, actually, but he doesn't read music and he's not a musician. But he would sit down and just
He
play
plays
it.
the ear. Mm.
And yeah, and so I think that must have made an impression on me. But actually, I only took up the piano, I believe, because my brother started having lessons, and I think I didn't want to be left out as a child. So, about 12 and a half. But really, I was bitten by the bug when I went to see Star Wars in 1977, and I was only 6 years old, and I remember running home and trying to pick out the tune on the piano and getting really quite disappointed that it seemed quite complicated and I couldn't quite find where the harmony was. And it's quite a complicated tune, and that's one of the brilliances of John Williams, that he keeps the complication of the music under the hood. We don't need to know about that as the audience. All we know is that we enjoy it and we love it and we can hum it. But there's all sorts of clever stuff. It's like musical vitamins that, you don't know. You get the good stuff into you, but you don't necessarily have to know you're getting it. And that really intrigued me as a child. I really went to the cinema a lot. I loved it, and I always listened to the music. There's just something that caught my ear from an early time. So that's when I started trying to play it on the piano and figure out how all the notes go together, and a bit like a big Meccano set or something. You've got all these moving parts. How do they all work together to fit together to make that machine that comes alive when you've got an orchestra playing all those notes? Yeah.
Oh, beautiful. Now, when did you first start studying Asian and African musical instruments? When did you start with that?
Well, that's an interesting question. There's a few answers to that. I'm not sure what the right answer is, but I'll tell you very candidly that the funny thing is that I've never really studied it properly, and when I did The Last King of Scotland, I was still quite young, and Kevin MacDonald, brilliant director who I work with a lot, as you said, we did those other films together first. And Kevin asked me to go out to Uganda because he'd come from a documentary background. Even though that's a feature film, he felt really strongly that I should go out with them whilst they were shooting the film in Kampala to soak up the music there and record a lot of music and sort of just discover what's going on the ground musically. And I did that, and we recorded all sorts of things, singers and choir and percussion, and we actually recreated some of the bands that would have played for Idi Amin in the 70s, and we re-recorded that, and I produced that for the record. And so, that's when you're young, you just go off and, take your laptop and go and do stuff.
On the fly? It was all on the fly, sort of learn on the job?
Totally. And then after that, people started asking me to do movies that were, based in Africa or other parts of the world. And so I said yes, but I think they thought I was an expert. It's a far from it. All I can say is that I think, looking back on my career as it is now, the one thing I can see various threads, but one thread is that I've always enjoyed collaborating with people, and I've been thrown into many situations like that where I found myself sitting in the middle of a field in Uganda at 6 o'clock in the morning with a tape recorder and a choir, and that seems to happen to me fairly regularly. I haven't gone looking for it, but I've enjoyed collaborating with people, and I think that's why it seems to happen again and again, because I enjoy it, and I guess I must be good at it, but I don't have that formal training. Funny you should say it though, because the other answer is that I've always loved music from all around the world, and I've never really felt that there's any difference to music coming from maybe, African music isn't a thing, as you know, it's because Africa's a huge continent. There's West Africa, and there's East Africa, and there's South Africa. There's not a thing as African music, but I've always listened. I sort of listen to everything, and I don't really draw any distinction between high art or low art or folk music or classical music. It's all just always been music
Mhm.
to me, and that's probably another reason why I've ended up doing that. When I was at university, I learned to play Indonesian gamelan a bit, and I spent 2 years studying various different gamelan instruments, and then when I was a postgrad, I did a couple of drumming courses with someone from Africa, but that was not because I had any burning desire to be like a world music specialist. I just thought, well, this sounds fun. I'll do that.
Okay, that's good. So it was a little bit more than on the fly in Uganda. You had that education in school.
I think so, but you only realize this, a bit like my story with Southern Light. You only realize this in retrospect when you look back and you can follow the chain, the thread of things. But in the moment, I tend to just do what my instinct tells me. Um, and then you look back afterwards and try and see if you can thread a line that actually makes sense. So that's the slight,
That always sounds great. Now, a little bit of we all love the stories behind the story. So when you were in Uganda for the Last King of Scotland, you had to track down a musician who hadn't performed since the time of Idi Amin. And this was before we had social media. And you know how addresses are not necessarily set up, with a street number and things like that. So if you just tell us a little bit, how did you track down some of those musicians who hadn't been seen nor heard from in over 20 years? How did you do it?
Yeah, well, with a lot of help, which is the answer to most things in film. I made a really good friend, Richard Coeso, who's a brilliant singer and musician in Kampala, and he was hired by the film company to be, actually, he wasn't really hired at first to help with music because he's a very entrepreneurial person in all sorts of ways. And he was helping with various liaison things on the ground. But when I got there, I was introduced to him and I was told he's a singer and great. And we became friends and we went out and I met his family and all this stuff. And then he started basically making some calls for me, and then we would go around and we would meet someone, and then we would go and do a bit of recording. And they would say, oh, well, you've got to go and meet this person. From place to place. And we ended up recording one thing in like an old meat packing factory in the middle of the night with a band. And then they said, oh, you've got to meet this person. And we went and we recorded a track with Angela Kalule, I think, who was a radio presenter, and she sang me and Bobby McGee in the film. She was actually in the film, and we recorded her for the album. And then she knew someone who knew someone, and so we would jump on the little tuk-tuks, the motorbikes that would take you around. And so I'm always just very open to exploring. I think that's where this conversation is.
Okay, wonderful. Lovely story. And Kawesa features on your Face to Face album.
He does.
We'll speak about later. He's a wonderful musician. I actually learned about his music through your music, through Face to Face.
Right, good.
All right. So for director Miranaya's A Suitable Boy, the TV series of not long ago, you featured alongside the sitar master Anushka Shankar. Did you play any instruments on that particular album?
Well, we did that whole album during COVID. We did the first sessions. Me and Anushka were here in London, actually. We got together a couple of times, literally just before everything got shut down, which was really lucky. So we recorded the main theme and a few other things here in my studio where I'm sitting now. And then what happened is I went back to California, and everything got shut down. And so we did the rest of the project remotely, which actually turned out to be sort of interesting and quite creative, because what we had to do was I sent a bunch of microphones over to Anushka's house, and then she introduced me to, I already knew some people in India because I've been to India quite a lot, which is a whole other story. But I knew some people there, and then she introduced me to some amazing musicians that she's worked with here and in India. And also Mira has some contacts, and she likes to use some friends of hers on things. So we ended up recording a lot remotely with people in Mumbai and in Delhi, mostly Mumbai and Delhi. And I played quite a bit of bits and pieces, but actually what I did was I wrote the music, and then I would send out a rough demo of what I wanted to do, or what Anushka and I had been working on. Anushka and I would do a lot actually with voice memos on phones. We would just text each other bits and pieces back on our phone. And so she'd like have a night, she'd play me a little bit on the sitar and send me a few bars as a voice message. And then I would I'd be writing something, I'd put that in, and I'd sort of demo it up, send it back to her, and then she would actually play the real thing, record it with the microphones that we'd sent her. And then I would send that over to Mumbai or to Delhi, and we would have a lot of percussion or all sorts of other instruments like Carnatic violin. They would send me that stuff back, and then I spent a long time chopping that all up. It's not really playing an instrument, but one thing I've got quite good at by doing face to face, which is something we can talk about later, is recording something with someone and then taking that material away and sort of working with it and sort of molding it a bit like clay, sort of turning it to where you want it to be. And so it was really fun. I would just get loads and loads of multi-tracks of amazing percussion from people, a couple of different guys in India. And I would chop it up. We would make new sample instruments from it, and I would then reconstruct what I wanted out of that. So it was very creative experience, and probably one we might not have gone down had we just been doing it a bit more conventionally in a way.
Okay, at this point, I would like to share a little bit of music from, let's see, from A Suitable Boy. So let's see if I can do that. Let's see. Let's share. I love this song.
Nice. I'm just looking that up actually because
I love that song.
no, it's beautiful. And I have to say, I cannot claim to actually have any part of that. You've picked like the one piece that Anushka wasn't playing and I was involved in. That's actually well, it's a traditional rag. It's the rag Kamaj, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I'm trying to think which scene that comes in, and Vikram Seth, who wrote the novel, of course, and it's just phenomenal. It's like it's like the exemplar of the grand Indian novel in a way. He's amazing. He was really he's very musically sort of literate and passionate about music, and so he had various rags that he was really keen to have in the show, and this was one of the rags. Excuse me, Anushka also recorded rag Lalit, I think, for episodes as well. So this is something that I knew about the idea of rags, but I'll be honest, I'm not an expert at all. But Anushka is, well, I mean, not to put it too finely, as you say, she's a master at what she does, and she comes from a lineage of masters. Her father having been Ravi Shankar, so there's no one who really knows more about it than Anushka. She's the real deal. So I was very keen to let her sort of tell me when I was doing the right thing or the wrong thing. I mean, an interesting example was the opening title sequence, which she had an idea about a rag that her father had written, Ravi had written for Independence Day,
Okay.
which is he wrote a new rag for Indian Independence Day, and she thought it would be nice to take that rag and try and create a new piece of music that references that. And so she recorded the rag, sent me some little bits, and then I wrote a piece that takes those little bits, and then I wrote my own things and sort of constructed the whole thing into a whole. And so it was a brilliant way of. That's the best way of learning something, is to sort of actually try and do it rather than read too much about it. So I had a very good crash course in Indian music education, which I loved. I'm totally hooked on it. I love it.
Yeah, lovely soundtrack. Now we move to Face to Face.
Right.
So Face to Face, was this your first solo album?
Yeah.
Not solo really, but your first collaboration outside of film.
Outside of film, yes. Yeah. A lot of film composers have this idea of wanting to do an album outside of film, but finding what's the right thing for you isn't easy. And this is something that just one day I woke up and I had the idea. It was sort of strange. It was a bit of an intuition thing, but people ask me, or used to ask me a lot, where do you get inspiration from as a composer? And I'm quite glib, and I usually say something like, well, there isn't time to have inspiration. When you've got 4 weeks to write an hour and a half of music, it's just mostly fear that gets it done. Which is, it's sort of true, but obviously we're all inspired by everything all the time. We're inspired by everything around us. It's like fish in water. We don't know we're swimming in it, but everything influences us. But I woke up one day and I thought, I was thinking about that question. Maybe someone had asked me in an interview, and I thought, well, wouldn't it be, maybe I should make a record with people who inspire me, and we should go to inspiring places, an interesting place, and do something on that day, make something up, improvise, or make something up on the spot. And then that can be like a record of the moment of inspiration. And I can use that as a sort of, well, here you go. This is what inspiration looks like in the moment, sort of thing. And that's how Face to Face came about. So I chose 6 people who are artists who didn't necessarily work in film at all, most of them, but I thought were really inspiring people. I either really liked their music or them as a character or as a person. I mean, obviously all their music I loved as well, but something about them that I thought was inspiring. And I tried to pair them we did it face to face, one-on-one. And I tried to pair them with an interesting location or place. So as you say, I went back to Uganda and we recorded with Kawesa in Kampala, which I love. Kampala, it's just, I don't know, just one of those places I just really, really like. It's one of the few places I can imagine wanting to live.
Beautiful.
In. And I did 2 songs with Regina Spektor in New York, and Regina was she was nervous about it because it was she didn't quite know what was going to happen. I said, don't worry, I'll find a really cool location. And I found an empty warehouse in the East Bronx. It's a big long warehouse with glass roof, which actually turned out to be incredibly hot in the summer. It sounded great in there, and we brought in a Celeste and a pump organ and a little piano, and it was just an interesting environment. And we had a bird came and sat on the windowsill, and actually as she sang and played and I was playing, the bird just sang for about 30 or 40 minutes. It wouldn't stop, and you can hear it on the record. We actually called one of the songs Bird Song, because you can hear it tweeting away all the way through, and it gives an interesting
feel.
So the idea was not to necessarily do it in a studio, but go somewhere inspiring. And so the whole project was very much an exploration of what does it take to spark your imagination in the moment. That was a fun thing to do.
Yeah, so you featured Tunde Jegede, there was Yasmin Levy, there was Ryuichi Sakamoto-san, who we're going to speak more of later, Matthew Barley, and then you've mentioned Kawesa and Regina Spektor. And for two of the artists, Yasmin Levy, am I saying it Levy right, or Levy?
Yeah, Levy. She probably says, I don't know how she's. I mean, both of them.
Okay.
I would have to go and ask Yasmin how she actually pronounces. I think she probably says Levy, but
Very good. Okay, so with Levy and Kawesa, there are vocals in those songs. So did they sing it for you just like a cappella first, and then you figured out what kind of melody, or how did you work with those two performers?
Yasmin was. She's amazing. I mean, she is really off the charts because, first of all, she was feeling quite sick that day, and she really,
Oh,
she really battled through, and you wouldn't know when you hear it because she
no.
sounds phenomenal.
Yeah.
And she turned up, and she had jotted down a few words on a piece of paper that, in advance. I mean, I had said to everyone, "Don't worry about preparing anything because this is about being in the moment." So she hadn't really prepared much, but she jotted down a couple of words. But we were in this amazing space in the Holywell Music Room in Oxford, which is the oldest concert hall in the UK. Actually, it's the longest going concert. It's been there since the 1750s, I think.
Wow.
And they have a really beautiful Steinway piano. It's a beautiful sounding hall. So I thought it'd be interesting to record in there because it's not really used as a recording studio usually. And almost everything that we did with Yasmin was totally like a one take, just hit record. And I started playing and she just started singing this amazing stuff. And the words were coming out. I don't think she had more than a few words written on the piece of paper, but she was just sort of channeling something. And it almost sounds like those are songs that have already been sort of made up and worked on, but genuinely they were just done in the spur of the moment. It's a really weird thing.
That's actually phenomenal. I'm going to play one song, the one I really love, Venkarida. This time around, I'm playing the right.
Yeah.
So I'll put this on. Let's see. I'll play a little bit of it, and I'll see if I can make it. Let's see if I do. Oh, yes.
Querida, tan amada, tan albodre de la mar, te contaré mis males, que te metes a llorar. Querida, tan amada, tan al borde de la mar. Ven te contaré mis males, que te metes a llorar.
I can't believe that was just on the fly. Beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah, it's funny listening to it, but I can tell you, I had never played that piece of music before, and I have never played it since. So I do not know where it came from, but that's what I love about that record. It really captures a moment, like a magical moment that was unexpected, and that was what I wanted to do with it.
Yeah, phenomenal. I absolutely love that album. All right, yeah. Now we move on to Crystalline. So you
Right.
just announced that you have an upcoming EP. The full thing is being released December 1st, but you're releasing tracks this Friday and subsequently. And it's a tribute album to your friend who passed away, Ryuichi Sakamoto, the great composer and musician and everything. And this is very personal, but if you're willing to share some words on what this album means to you, to share it with everyone.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so the first single came out the other day, last Friday, and lots of people have listened to it, which has it's been wonderful. So when I did Face to Face, I asked Ryuichi, who I to collaborate on that record, and he was very inspiring, of course, as a composer and musician. And also, he was an actor and he was an activist, and just one of those people who is just really unique.
Yeah.
And we had an amazing load of sessions in New York, and we recorded 2 songs that ended up on Face to Face. But we recorded a lot else that just got archived, and I just, as often happens on projects, there were lots of outtakes and things that got put on a drive and put away, and I just didn't listen to, for many years. And when Ryuichi, I was in touch with them 2 years ago when we re-released Face to Face.
Yeah.
And I knew he was ill, but then, unfortunately, he died I think it was end of March this year, and I sort of knew it was coming, but it's never great when it happens, because there's the thought of it and then the reality of it. And so after he died, I didn't really, again, I guess I was following my intuition. I didn't really do anything immediately, but after a couple of months, I was thinking about it, and I went back through that archive, and I was listening back to some of those outtakes that I hadn't listened to for many, many years.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of music, and there was a couple of things that just really caught my ear, and I thought, how interesting. I'd never noticed those when we did the original sessions. I wonder if there's something, interesting there. And I just started, what I like to do is not really think too hard about things, but if something like catches my ear, I'll just find myself working on it. And I found myself for a couple of days just trying to craft, just chopping up and making some edits and mixing and balancing. And I ended up with a few pieces that they're quite short, but the reason why I called it crystalline really is because it felt like out of the big block of material that we'd recorded, these were sort of like little chunks of crystals, like little small pieces you could hold in your hand. They're only like 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes, 1 minute 45 of sort of little gems of something that I didn't know were there, like hidden gems that I'd found, under the ground. And so I wanted to call the EP Crystalline, and so each track I've named after a different crystal that just seemed to have just seemed to have the character of that little nugget of a piece. So the next single that's coming out is Obsidian, which is a very dark, sort of jet black crystal, and it felt like just that was just like the character of what that piece musically was. And the one that's just come out, so Celestine, is a very pinky purple, heavenly looking, I suppose, which is why they're there. But that piece is very sort of ephemeral. It's very high up in the piano, and it's not very grounded in the low end. And so I was following my instinct, in something I thought would be a nice tribute to Ryuichi, just to pay tribute to his inspiration and to have those little gems, those little nuggets that had been lying there, waiting to be rediscovered. So that's that project came about.
Okay, well, it's a beautiful tribute, and we look forward to listening to the EP. Yes.
Great.
So next we'll go to Knox Goes Away. So Knox Goes Away is a film, your latest, if I'm not mistaken, right?
I've been working on something else in the meantime, but that's still under wraps. So that
Okay.
will be for another day.
Okay, so Knox Goes Away, we can speak of. And so what I noticed, Birdman, a 2014 feature, which featured Michael Keaton playing an actor who had once been a superhero character, wanting to make his directorial debut and his acting debut uh, in a theater production. And it's this brilliant movie
Yes,
which shows how it proceeds and how things sort of unravel with him.
yes,
Now, there's a bit of life imitating art because now we have Michael Keaton, who did play Batman, and who is now making his directorial debut being an actor. And there was just a little bit of a parallel I found interesting. And I was wondering a couple of things. Firstly, this must be very important to Michael Keaton. He knows that there are people who will judge a movie even before they've seen it. So he's going to be very careful when he's making it. How did he find you? Did he find you through music you had done on other movies, or were you introduced? If you can share.
yeah. I don't really know. You have to ask Michael.
Oh,
I
can
got a call one day saying,
yeah.
"Oh, Michael Keaton wants to talk to you." So
Okay,
I said, okay.
okay.
um, and it was just before Christmas last year, and Michael called me and he said, "Hey," he said, "Alex," he said, "it's great to meet you." He sort of whispers a lot. He said, I've got this idea, and I think it'd be really cool to talk about it." And we talked in very abstract, vague terms.
Mhm.
He's very. The thing I really love about Michael is he's really open. He's a real artist. He's a truly brilliant actor. He
Mhm.
really is fantastic.
Yeah.
And I think because he's an actor, he's new to directing, so he's very open to, he's very much in the spirit of collaborating and, treating people like an artist and bringing their own ideas in. So we talked a lot about what the music might mean in this film, and it's a great film. It's really interesting. The proposition is that he plays a hitman at the end of his career, and the wrinkle in this is that he gets diagnosed with a very, very fast onsetting dementia, and he doesn't know how long he's going to have his marbles, quite frankly. And then there's a ticking clock through the film, and he has to solve the mystery of one final murder, if you like, that he sort of he makes a mistake and he kills someone by mistake, and then he needs to try and sort of make it good and fix it before he loses his sense of who he is and where he is. So there's a very clever ticking clock that goes through the film, and
Yeah.
so Michael wants to find what that musical universe meant in terms of someone losing their sense of self and their sense of time and their sense of why they are and who they are. So I think that's a very actor type. I think he was talking to me like an actor, which I really like, because when I'm writing film music, you really do have to become, as the composer, you sort of really have to become all of the actors in the film. You have to be able to somehow act out what they're doing sort of emotionally and musically, and translate it into music in a way that sort of fuses with their performances and doesn't get in the way of their performances, but sort of enhances them and helps them, sort of transmit more of themselves to the audience. So brilliant working with him, just having an actor's insight into how that works. Very interesting.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, I look forward to watching it, and I'm sure many people do as well. I know it premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival last month.
It is, and Al Pacino's in it as well. So it's,
Yeah,
that's a bit of movie magic with Michael and Al
yes.
on screen. This is pretty great.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, we're looking forward to that.
Yeah.
All right. So now I come to this section, which I titled "Tough Question Section." Like
Okay. All right. I'll break it up.
I actually called it that because I've had time to think about these questions, but you haven't had time to think about your answers. So,
No, this is it. We're doing it face-to-face style.
so if there's anything if you just want to jump over it, that's fine. So, all right. So this first one is. There appears to be an increased interest in replacing certain human artistry with AI sort of technology. And the recently resolved writers' strike and even the ongoing Screen Actors Guild, discussions, that's one of the things on the table. People are trying to protect their livelihood and their artistry by not having AI overrun the industry. Now that's for writing and acting, but we also know that for the music industry as well, AI has certainly made its presence shown more so now than before. Now, I had listened to an earlier interview of yours where someone had asked you a similar kind of question, and you had said 20 years ago, people had said, oh yeah, AI is going to put composers out of business, but it hasn't. But since you did that interview, things have accelerated. And so I ask you now, what is there anything that composer associations are doing now to discuss the incursion of AI technology into the creative aspect of your field?
That's an interesting word, incursion. I think it depends whether you think the glass is half full or half empty. It could be an incursion, or it could be a new tool that's a new toy that people could use. I think it depends how you look at it. I think it is something that instinctively it's quite a scary idea, but I'd prefer to think of it as an opportunity. I'm actually writing a piece. I'm working on a piece with a friend of mine who's she's an expert on algorithms and machine learning, and we're actually working on a little piece about this at the moment to think about this. So excuse me, I've been thinking about it a little bit, and I think I've also enjoyed thinking about it from all sorts of different points of view. I think, first of all, who knows what the future is going to bring? But one thing, I cannot see the future, but one thing I know is going to happen is that the future is going to happen. AI's here, it's not going anywhere. So, you can't put that genie back in the bottle. So we're all going to have to learn to understand what it means in our lives, whether we're artists or whether we're doctors or anything else. And so I think AI it'll mean that certain jobs and certain things in a way are redundant, and I think that could apply as much to people in creative arts and music, what I do, as it might do in all sorts of other ways. That said, maybe I'm just a blind optimist, but one would hope that it frees people up to do more interesting things in life, and it allows you to have new tools. So I think as a composer, I think it's going to be perfectly possible, and I think it is now for AI to create new music, and new music that sounds quite good, and probably as a poet as well as as a doctor, I'm sure GPT probably comes up with quite interesting stuff. But I think the question is, who is going to be the arbiter of taste of what that stuff is? Because just to use composers as an example, okay, once an algorithm's come up with a piece of music, which obviously is derived from the full content of whatever is on Google, exactly. And that's a whole copyright issue that I think everyone's been talking about. The algorithm is obviously deriving new material from existing material, which obviously is what composers like me do anyway, because we're soaking up music. But it's maybe a little more of a direct sort of regurgitation in the sense of AI. But the problem is, once the algorithms come up with a piece of music, who's going to say whether they think it's any good or interesting, and how is that piece of music going to be promoted? You're going to, like, if you're a band, you need to go off and do concerts. Are people really going to want to do a concert and have no one on stage, no personality, no human figure to sort of tell their story, to sort of sing a song that means something to them as a person? So I think personally what's going to happen is that we're all going to get really excited about algorithmic AI art for a short time, where it's going to come up with all sorts of wacky, crazy, interesting stuff. And then we're all going to go, yeah, okay, but but where's the human? Because we all like personalities. We like to have a human behind the art. We like to know who the author is. We like to know where she might have come from and what she might have done as a child to transform into being a writer, or what experiences this person might have led them to become a composer or whatever. So I think we're going to. I think the novelty will wear off a little quickly, and then it'll settle down into just being another tool in the box. Which isn't to say it's not going to be very widely used. I do believe AI is going to be very, very prevalent, and I think it may well. I think it might go to the lowest common denominator of creative arts, that music, like music, library music that might be behind sports results or something, which is not to denigrate it, because it's still music and it can be great. But I think people will be looking to generate all sorts of background music or background text or stuff for free, basically. They'll be looking for that, and I think they're going to get AI to do that. I think what will happen is, though, that the quality, it may be all right, it may be so-so. Still, someone's got to arbitrate that. And okay, you ask the algorithm, come up with 10 songs that we could use for background music in a lift, in an elevator. Someone's still got to then say, okay, which ones are we going to choose? Which ones do we like? They're then going to take it to a marketing company who are going to play it to a bunch of people who are going to say, yeah, I think this one would work well in an elevator, this one would. And at some point, they're going to go, why are we paying marketing people to do that? Maybe we should go and ask the composer what they think. So we're going to have this situation where they're going to send algorithmic music to musicians and say, which ones of these do you like? And a composer's going to go, well, I sort of like that one, but how about if you take the bass line from this and you put it with the tune in that? And then they're going to go, oh, could you do that for us? And then we're going to go back full circle, and you're going to end up writing it as a human again. So the genie's out of the bottle. It's not going away. It's going to be everywhere, all over our lives. But I don't think it's going to rule us. I think we're going to be using it in new ways, and this is how I'm thinking about it.
Okay, it's a very broad, it's actually a very broad question, because as you were speaking, all kinds of things were going on in my mind. I said, okay, so who is going to decide, is this good music or not? You have your taste now, but if you had grown up listening only to AI music, you wouldn't have anything else to compare it to.
No, and I think people are going to start valuing. I think they already start valuing older music and art. I mean, there's a younger generation now who, because they have everything on Spotify and they can listen to the Beatles catalog and stuff from the 1950s or the 1970s or David Bowie or whatever. I think they have very, very broad access to material and actually have quite broad listening tastes. So I think people will, as you say, the more they're exposed to algorithmic art, I think they'll be actually quite attracted to human art. As even more, but we'll see. I'm not saying I'm right or wrong, because I definitely cannot see the future. All I can do is just do my thing in the moment.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. All right, so the last tough question. So touching again on this loss of livelihood potential that is kind of inevitable. So you had mentioned in an earlier interview how you hadn't necessarily gone to a compositional school. You're a classically trained musician, Oxford, and you were like, there are many schools right now. So I went to Google. Google, how many colleges are there offering compositional studies in America? And it was 211. Wow. And compared to the UK 38. And I started looking at things, how much they charge, how long, and things like that. And I was like, okay, when you go to speak, because you'll be invited, you're a distinguished professional in this field, and you're invited to these schools and you have to speak. How do you balance being optimistic with cold, hard reality?
Well, when I was a student, there was no opportunity to train to be a film composer. I think there was one place, there was the National Film and TV School, and they took 1 or 2 people a year. And even then, I'd never heard of it till later anyway. So it just wasn't a thing. So you're right. There's been an absolute explosion in educational opportunities for people, and I think the nub of the question you're asking me is, with all of those people being trained, is it realistic to expect that they're all going to have jobs? I think that's
yes.
Well, I guess the first thing I would say, and I talk to a lot of young composers who contact me all the time looking for sort of either help or guide them in their path. The one thing I would say is, well, first of all, being a composer isn't really a job. It's definitely, I wouldn't say it's a job. It's more of a vocation. It's it's a job in the sense that I do it every day. I've only ever earned my livelihood from doing it, and it's what I get up and do all day, every day. But you sort of to be successful and to be good at it, you just have to be absolutely obsessed with it. It has to be something that you just have to do because you're driven to do it, because your brain is just constantly telling you to write music. So if you've got that drive already, I think you'll be fine. And it doesn't matter how much you've learned in college, but if you're not feeling that, there might be other things that you can do that might serve you better, really, in a way. I think there are many opportunities for people, with all these streaming platforms and everything. There are many more opportunities now, but there are many more people who want to do it as well, and that's driven the prices down, like in everything. Budgets have come down and all that stuff. But I think just in a purist creative way of just answering your question, I always think that it doesn't matter how many people there are in a field, there's always this like narrow 1% of people who are just brilliant. It's a weird thing, but in anything, it could be in medicine, it could be in writing, it could be in music, but it doesn't really matter how many people. There aren't that many people who are just brilliant. And I always say to young composers, just be brilliant. just love what you do and just try and do it as well as possible. And if you really wake up in the morning and you can envisage yourself doing something else, it might be better to do something else. Because if you can only imagine yourself doing this, then it's not really even a question you have to ask yourself. You will do it, and you'll probably just do fine. You'll do well. But at some point people think it's really what I want to do, and then after a few years of struggle and it's tough, and people start thinking, well, I could do something else, then your nature is telling you, it's selecting you to go a different path. And I've never wavered from that path. I just naively have always wanted to do it, and I didn't go and learn how to do it. I've been very lucky, I think, in many ways, and I think the pool of people is much broader than it used to be now. There's so many more women doing it. There's people from all different parts of the world. When I started, I was a white, sort of young guy, probably exactly the right demographic. So I got my leg up, and it probably was, that helped. But I think it's much more healthy now that I've mentored lots of young female composers, and to me that just seems sort of normal, because why wouldn't you want to be a composer if you're a girl? So I think there are many more opportunities, and I always say to people, don't feel despairing that there are all these people who want to do it. Just be really good, and then you'll have something to say, because after all, you just need to have something to say that people are interested in. So you want to have, either in words or in music or in whatever you're doing, you need to just do something that means something to people, that they want to focus on what you're telling them and enjoy it. So just do that and see what happens. That sounds very airy fairy, but I honestly, I don't like giving career advice to people too much, other than that, because I can't teach you how to be yourself, and being a composer or a writer is just being yourself as well as you can, really.
Well, thank you. You've made it through the ring of fire. And the next session is all fun and games and laughter, I hope. All right. So this is called Favorite Things. And I will just mention two things, and you will say your favorites, or if it's neither, neither. So Johannes Brahms or Robert Schumann?
I would say Brahms piano music and Schumann orchestral music, although that might be contentious.
Okay, lovely. All right, time travel. You're in the 16th century. Which would you rather be? The court composer for Queen Elizabeth I in her court, or be the music director at the Globe Theatre?
I think I might have less chance of my head being chopped off in the grave.
Yeah. All right. So the bard comes to you. He loves your work and he wants you to score one of two. Which would you choose? Would you rather score Hamlet or 12 Nights? Which one?
Well, it's interesting because a lot of my career has been Hamlet. It's been pretty dark and intense, but I've really enjoyed doing comedies. I did this Mafia Mama comedy
Yes.
with Tony Collette this year, which is coming out in the UK, and I've really loved it. So, maybe I'd veer to something a bit lighter, like 12th Night. That could be
There
fun.
you go. There you go. Great. All right. Godfather 1 or Godfather 2?
Well, I mean, they are of a piece in a way. I know, yeah, it's probably received wisdom that 2 is even better than 1. I think you sort of got to take them together. I don't think you can split those.
Okay, nice. Okay, would it be the same then for Richard Linklater's Before Sunrise and Before Sunset?
I have not seen either.
I recommend if you ever have a chance. Okay, how about Stephen Sondheim's Sweeney Todd or Into the Woods?
Well, I'm slightly biased because I worked on the movie of Sweeney Todd with Tim Burton. I really like Into the Woods. It's great actually, but I must say I think Sweeney Todd is his masterpiece.
Yeah.
It is exceptional. It's really just the lyrics of both off the charts, brilliant, and the music is really good. But somehow the combination of the darkness of the music and the lyrics in Sweeney Todd, pretty amazing.
Yeah, amazing. That movie was great.
It's a good film. I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah, totally. All right, chess or cards?
I don't play chess. It's
neither do I.
When I did Queen of Cutway, we had a chess consultant who had to explain to me what was going on in the chess. And you know what? To my father's chagrin, because my family on his side were all amazing bridge players. My grandfather played bridge for his country. So, but I never picked it up because I don't know. It was slightly intimidating. They were all so good at it. So I play Uno, if that counts for my daughter.
Okay, we'll put that in as cards then. Cards. There you go. Nuts or fruits?
I mean, they go so well together. Why would you want to separate those? I put that in the Godfather character. Category.
Okay, now jollof rice or Kenyan pilau?
I'd probably go for the rice.
Jollof rice, yeah, right answer. All your West African friends will love you. Yeah, all right. So now let's see if we have any comments at all. If not, then you can just share anything you would want to share. I don't know, where do I see this? No comments here. Let's see. Okay. All right. Is there anything in closing you would like to share with your fans, those of us who follow your work, those who are new to your work, anyone about your movie or albums or anything?
I suppose the only thing I'd like to share is just say thank you for listening, because it's actually genuinely, it's wonderful to know that people are listening. And I'm sitting in a room on my own all day long writing music, and I'm sort of quite separated from people until I get to go out and talk to people like you. And so I think with technology as it is now with YouTube and Spotify, it allows us to connect, and Instagram and I'm very new to all of this. I only started doing Instagram last year and all of that stuff. So it's been a real nice pleasure. I wasn't sure I was going to enjoy it, but I've really enjoyed meeting people and just knowing that your work is out there and people are enjoying. I sort of knew it was out there and people are listening, but it's really great to see on Spotify. I have a couple of 100,000 people listening every month, and it just feels great to know that the work's out there and being enjoyed. Because after all, that's what I want, is people just to give them a moment of sort of pleasure or happiness or enjoyment. So and so I say thank you for this today, because I've enjoyed this work.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much for coming on, and for everyone who is watching and will watch in the future. Thank you so much for watching. When I put up the YouTube video on YouTube, I'm going to have links to Alex's music, so you can click on it and listen to more. And Alex, if you want to try to take us out. with his from Sudden Light, Alex's album. There's a piece, I Have Been Here Before, which is named after the first line of a Rossetti poem called Sudden Light. And yeah, Alex will share that with us. And please subscribe to my channel, Writer Chinwe John, so you can get to see the video when I put it up. And thank you. So let's see, want to try?
Let's try it. Let's give the technology a go. I'm going to press play, and then you can stop the live stream whenever you are ready. I'm going to let you deal with that. Okay, are you in screen sharing mode?
Yes, if you, so let's hit present and then hit share screen at the bottom.
Oh, okay. Sorry, present.
Share screen.
Present, I get it. Yeah, shared screen. Okay, share screen. There we go. You seeing that?
No, so I'll just quickly put it up. Temperamental technology. Let's see. I have been here before. Let's share it. There we go. There we go.
Is it playing?
Yes, but I put it up. So we'll see for how long YouTube allows me to keep it up. There you go.